In 1968, a 4-year-old sat alone in a small room with one marshmallow on a plate. A researcher gave a simple deal: eat it now or wait 15 minutes for a second one. Then the adult walked out and left the child staring at the treat, completely alone. That single test became one of the most quoted findings in psychology. It launched books, TED Talks, and entire school curriculums. And most of what people believe about it is wrong. The experiment came out of Stanford, run by a psychologist named Walter Mischel. The follow-up study years later is the part everyone remembers. Researchers tracked down the same children as teenagers and found something striking. The kids who'd waited longer for the second marshmallow scored significantly higher on their SATs, higher grades, better social skills, even healthier body weight, decades on. The story practically wrote itself. Willpower at age 4 was destiny. Self-control was the hidden ingredient separating the people who make it from the people who don't. Mischel later wrote an entire best-selling book about it, built almost entirely around that one idea. Except there was a problem sitting quietly inside the original sample, one that took nearly 50 years for anyone to seriously test. The children in that famous follow-up weren't a cross-section of America. They were the sons and daughters of Stanford faculty, graduate students, and staff, kids growing up in one of the most privileged, stable zip codes in the country. And the sample size behind the eye-popping SAT correlation was small, under 100 children. For decades, nobody ran it again at real scale. Then, in 2018, 3 researchers, Tyler Watts, Greg Duncan, and Haonan Kwan, decided to test it properly. They rebuilt the study using data from nearly 1,000 children pulled from a nationally representative, economically diverse sample, roughly 10 times larger than the original. And critically, they did something the first study never did. They controlled for the child's family background, the mother's education, household income, and stability at home. The result cut the legend down to size. The link between waiting and later success was still there, but it was about half as strong as everyone had believed. And once family background was factored in, most of that remaining link nearly disappeared. Waiting for a marshmallow on its own barely predicted anything. What it was actually tracking, it turned out, was something else entirely: where the child came from. Here's the part that flips the whole story. For 50 years, the kid who grabbed the marshmallow immediately was treated as the cautionary tale, impulsive, weak-willed, the one destined to struggle later. But grabbing it wasn't a failure of character. It might have been the most rational move in the room. Waiting for a second marshmallow requires believing the adult will actually come back and deliver on the promise. Not every child has been given a reason to believe that. In 2013, researchers at the University of Rochester tested this directly. Before the marshmallow ever appeared, they had children complete a small task with an adult who made a promise about bringing better art supplies. For half the kids, the adult kept the promise. For the other half, the adult returned empty-handed and apologized. Only then did the real marshmallow test begin. The children who'd just learned the adult was trustworthy waited on average 4 times longer than the children who'd learned the adult's word meant nothing. Same marshmallow, same room, same age. The only difference was whether the child had any reason to believe the second marshmallow was actually coming. Think about what that means for the original test. A child raised in a stable home where promises are usually kept and dinner reliably shows up has every reason to bet on the future. A child raised somewhere less predictable, where good things tend to vanish before they're delivered, has learned the smarter move is to take the guaranteed thing in front of them right now. One of those children looks patient, the other looks impulsive, but the real gap between them was mostly written long before either one sat down at that table. We took that gap and called it willpower. And that mislabeling didn't stay contained to a psychology study. It became a convenient story for everyone already comfortable, a way to believe success was earned purely through discipline, and struggle was purely a failure of character. It let the world look at people who make short-term choices under long-term uncertainty and quietly conclude they simply didn't want it badly enough. To be fair, the 2018 replication didn't erase the idea of self-control entirely. There's still a small, real signal buried in the data. But it's a whisper, not the roar it became in popular culture. Somewhere in the original 1968 experiment is a 4-year-old who looked at that marshmallow, decided the promise wasn't trustworthy, and took the sure thing while it was still available. For decades, that child was held up as the example of what not to become. But maybe that child wasn't failing a character test at all. Maybe they were simply the most accurate judge of the room they were sitting in. The next time you catch yourself judging someone for choosing the thing in front of them instead of the bigger reward down the road, it might be worth asking a different question. Not whether they have the discipline to wait, but whether anyone in their life ever gave them a real reason to.